The last two big updates were packed with a lot of things. And I would say the highlight for me is definitely the massive buff on missiles, the massive buff on drones. Besides those two weapon systems, a lot of other weapons have been buffed as well. But I would say the most notable change is done on missiles and drones. And well, today I'll be checking out the good old space pan. This is one ship that I believe has been massively impacted by the missile buff. The Raven Striker, Typhoon are also on the list. The Typhoon should be extremely lethal now. That's the ship with the best missile application in the game. So, let me quickly show the skills. So I have all the new missile skills maxed out. And besides the missile skills, I believe some of the implants have been adjusted as well. Some have been buffed, some have been nerfed. All that does make a lot of change in combat. As for the missiles, I believe the missile implants remain generally the same. The most performance gains come from the new skills. On paper, the buffs are enormous, and I'm very interested to see how the actual performance, how the actual use will look. Now, the space pan, the Barghest, is known to be one of the best performing missile ships. After all, Mordu Legion has the best missile stats in the game. However, the Spaceman has been buffed a couple times in the recent past. First, they have increased the ship's speed, and then they gave the Barghest a little bit more missile damage application. So, over time, the Barghest became better. After all, this thing costs so much, it better be performing really well. But the other stats have been generally the same. This is still the good old paper pan. These ships are not really known for their tank, they're known for their DPS and range. So 2714.11 DPS. I used to have about 2000 DPS on this thing, so already about 700 DPS gain. Could be even more because it's been a while since I was looking at this ship. Now the missile stats look much better. The maximum range used to be 150 kilometers. Now it's 223 kilometers. Okay, well, that's kinda scary. And the rest of the build is about the same. This is the PvP build, works with long range missiles, works with the rapid missiles, also works well with the torpedoes. As for the nanocore, well, I have the Deathwish nanocore, and somewhere in the hangar I also have the, I think it was called the Cyber X nanocore, but you have a lot of options for the Barghest. And since this ship is not really a good tank, I tried to make the Barghest a good tank. I always failed because it never meets the requirement that I have set for the ship. So with the nanocore, you can go with extra points, you can go with extra damage, extra speed, extra shield and tank can be good, but Mordo ships aren't really known to be good tanks. They're generally known for having excellent DPS, crazy range, and crazy alpha damage. But again, you have a lot of nanocores to choose from, and if you don't know which one to pick, just go with the Concord Pass nanocore. That way, you can't go wrong. But the Concord Pass nanocore doesn't look that good. I mostly pick nanocores based on their appearance. But today I'll be using the Deathwish nanocore because I like how it looks and it doesn't affect the DPS at all. So, missiles are one of the two weapon systems where I like to integrate them. The other weapon system that I integrate are drones. Missiles and drones can take good advantage from integrations, although in this video I will also show you the cheap option. Doesn't have to be integrated. The cheap Barghest build works really well as well. In some cases it's actually much better for DPS, but I'll talk about that when I change the rigs. But currently I basically took advantage of the 4P integrations and I slapped all the necessary rigs to maximize all stats on the missiles. This is the exact same build that I run on my personal Barghest that I use for PvP. Okay, now as for the rigs, as for the implants, you have two options. Actually three, but I use two of them: tactical missiles and warhead charge. Now, warhead charge is good for sustained DPS. You can pick between damage types. It's very nice, and overall one of my favorite implants because it's just very fun to use. The general units are focused on maximum DPS, the exact same units that I have on my personal Barghest or Ortus, because the units are universal for both of these ships. Okay, let's take a look at maximum DPS, and I hate when the game just scatters my missiles all over the place. It creates a mess and I have to fix that mess. Now it's much better. Okay, let's take a look at the maximum speed as well as the DPS. .6 kilometers per second, not bad. Used to be much slower, but again the space pen has been buffed over time and they have increased its speed quite a bit. Now when I go into the long range mode, the missile range is 290 kilometers. This is cold, by the way. That's a lot of range, and the other stats are also very nice. Precision mode has improved the explosion radius, 96.46 from 150, which honestly is a pretty good bonus, but both of the modes reduce your total DPS. For extra DPS you switch the missiles. Now I have the explosive missiles, and well, the DPS definitely much better than it used to be. 3.3 thousand, 4121.90, and with the second ballistic control 4893.80 DPS. Well, that's a interesting change indeed. I used to have this DPS with 3 or 4 ballistic controls. Now I get that DPS with 2. That's a very nice change. You can use the same build with rapid missiles. Rapid missiles are good against frigates, cruisers and battlecruisers. You have shorter range but much better damage application. 75.78 kilometers is still really good. Undocking. Now let me undock and let me show you the active stats. The speed of the ship will remain around the same. 2497 DPS, okay, that's really good. Now when I switch to the long range mode, 2256 DPS, 98.51 kilometer range. 16 kilometers per second is the missile speed, which is again a really nice thing. 40.92 meter explosion radius in the precision mode, again excellent stats. And let's take a look at the maximum DPS, 2788.35, and with the second one 4496.40 DPS. You know, this thing is actually becoming better and better as time goes on. I'm actually very happy that I bought the space pen, because now the thing is becoming a lot more lethal. And I overall really like the changes on the missiles. 3142 DPS with the torpedo launchers, okay. 43.92 kilometer is the missile range. Well, the missile range feels like it it was
Undocking.
well, not doubled, but from 32, 33 to 40 plus kilometers. It's a very good change, I would say. Now let's take a look at the active stats. I always click at the wrong button on the implant for some reason. 3171.91 DPS. Okay, pretty solid. With the long range modes, I have 57.1 kilometer, which is still, I would say, really good. Precision modes, it will improve the application a lot. 132 meter from 260 plus meters. Now let's take a look at the maximum DPS, 4,800 with one ballistic control, and with the second one, 5,731.76 DPS. I'm actually pretty happy with the current DPS. You will have enormous alpha damage with this thing. This thing just wrecks when it hits a battleship. And now let me go and let me show you the DPS with the tactical missiles. Now the tactical missiles have a shorter duration, doesn't have the same stable DPS as you get with the warhead charge, but you get much more paper DPS. Now for missiles, paper DPS isn't as important as damage application or sustained DPS, so the first implant can be good in some cases, while this one can be good in other cases. This one can actually give you extra points so that you can hold the target much easier, and nowadays that is also one very important aspect for PvP, especially when you have ships with 50 stabs flying around. You need to have a lot of points. 4,100 DPS with the primary skill, and with the other skill 5,100 cold DPS. With the first ballistic control, 6,300 DPS. With the second one, 7,565.55 DPS. A much better improvement, a much better result than before. And here you can take a look at the torpedo stats, which also look much better than they used to be. Well, definitely a notable change in the DPS. Now let's take a look at the cruise missiles. Again, same implant, same rigs. I'm looking at the older pictures in the background, and I used to have 5,500 DPS with this build using torpedoes, so a 2,000 DPS increase, very interesting, with the same build of course. 4,436 cold with one ballistic control, 5,400, and with the second one 6,455.25 DPS. Again, massive improvements. The missiles go 28 kilometers per second, and 232 kilometer is the missile range. Okay, well, the space span is definitely becoming very lethal, I would say. The space span slaps. Okay, let me try out the rapid missiles now. Again, you can use all the three missile systems depending on the situation, although these ships mostly rely on long range, so I would suggest that you try to use them at a long range. 3.2 thousand DPS, now 4077.03. With the first ballistic control, 4099.53. And with the second one, almost 6000 DPS. I like how the DPS is almost the same on all of the missile types. The highest is of course on the torpedo launchers, second highest on the cruise missiles, and the lowest on the rapid missiles, but the rapid missiles have a very specific purpose. They are good. On this ship you can use the rapids on all targets. They still have some very nice DPS. And now let's take a look at the cheaper options. So for DPS I will go with triple loading bay accelerators for the maximum possible paper DPS. Now with this ship you can actually do a lot of different combinations, and I would say rig the ship the way you like it. In my case, since I like high DPS, I'll just go with maximum possible missile rate of fire. But in some cases you will want to have extra damage, extra alpha damage, extra range, extra speed. Although the Barghest already has some really nice missile stats by default, so you can sacrifice that for some extra DPS. But in any case, I would still say that rig the ship the way you like it. And here you can take a look at the non-integrated missile stats. The DPS is about the same, but I lost a little bit of range, I lost a little bit of application, I lost a little bit of missile speed. And same thing can be said about the other missile systems. I fit a cruise missile just to show you the stats. I also fit a torpedo launcher to show you the stats. But still, some really good stats even without using integrations. And this is why I like to use integrations on missiles and drones. You can combine everything you need. You get excellent application, you get excellent missile speed and paper DPS. Overall, a increase on all of the missile parameters. Now you can also technically fit the Barghest to be a tank. Now I tried to make the Barghest a good tank many times before, and honestly I was never really completely happy with the result. On top of losing DPS, the ship has only 5 low slots, so it's not a good tank by default. So yeah, now the DPS is not that good, and the tank, well, the tank is not that good as well. Now it's not bad, but if we compare the DPS and tank on the other faction battleships that I covered, they are doing much better DPS, and they're also doing much better in the tank. So the Barghest is definitely the odd one, because this is one of those ships that is just not going to be a good tank. Now you can have some defense, you can give the ship tank rigs, but you will have poor DPS and your tank will be at best average. Now it's true that this ship has a lot of shield hit points, 71,000 cold, without any extenders or things like that. So a passive tank maybe, but still you will most likely lose a DPS rush battle, let's say, if you're fighting with someone that has high DPS, because even if you don't have even if you have a good tank, the opponent's tank is probably going to be better, because they probably have a different ship that's not a Mordor ship. Mordor ships are not really known for their tankiness, but I'm just showing you all of the different ideas just to give you an example of what you can expect if you try to build a space pen to be a tank. At best, an average tank and very poor DPS, and I personally don't really like how things look for this ship in terms of tank. So you should not rely on tank on the space pen, or you should not rely on the tank on any Mordor ship, because they are just paper and it's very easy to kill them if you have high DPS. You don't even have to build your ship to have high DPS in order to easily kill a tank build Barghest. A Macariel with a damage control and one adaptive is easily killing a Barghest that's having a full tank build. That's what type of paper we're talking about here, but that doesn't make the space pen a bad ship. I'm telling you this so that you know what situations to avoid with the ship. I'm also telling you that you know what to expect if your target is a space pen. If you manage to tackle a space pen, it's probably going to be killed. These ships rely on distance, on range, and speed. So that's why they have so much range on most of the weapons. I mean, the torpedoes have like 40 plus kilometer range, which honestly is fantastic for torpedoes. Means that you can basically kite with the close range brawler weapons. Now this is a high sec PvE build. Do not use this build for low sec, it's not going to end well. But for high sec this should run really smooth. Dual Nosferatus, dual webs, a scrambler, triple ballistic controls, one afterburner and one booster. This should sustain the ship for a very long time. After all, you will be at, I would say, 30 plus kilometers, 40 plus, 50 plus kilometers, and you will be taking very little damage, little to no damage. This is basically the build that I run on my own space pen for PvE. And for the implants, you can go with the warhead charge, you can also go with the tactical missiles, but I prefer the warhead charge because of the sustained DPS. In PvE, sustained DPS is a lot more important than burst DPS. It lasts much longer and it will allow you to clear the mission much faster. Although I don't use the space pen for PvE that often. I mostly use the Macariel, but the space pen can do high sec PvE AFK very easily. And I will show you the maximum DPS with this build, and I will also show you the long range build. Now this build can be used AFK, although if you want maximum possible performance with the warhead charge, then you would have to switch between missiles. I use thermal for shield and explosive for armor and hull, or you can use thermal for shield, explosive for armor, and then thermal back for hull, and then again for shield. And the DPS is actually pretty solid for rapid missiles. 5943.24 at 70 kilometers. So technically you can use this at long range as well, which is again a very nice and very interesting thing to have. And the long range build, now you can technically use the long range idea with the rapid missiles. Just swap the Nosferatus into target painters, and with the long range build target painters, and I have one missile gun as a computer. Although you don't have to use a missile gun as a computer, you can just use triple ballistic controls. It will improve the DPS quite a bit. And now let's undock and let's see the maximum possible DPS.
Okay,
2161.77 when everything is cold, with the explosive missiles 4502.40, and with the second ballistic control 5347.32.13. Well, here you can take a look at the maximum range, 341 kilometer. This is absolutely insane. The missiles have been dramatically improved in the last 2 months, 3 months, well, less than 2 months, 2 months. First, we have received the new skills, and then we have received the balance patch. And I don't know. If you have a missile ship, then
warp drive active.
I think you will definitely enjoy flying them a lot more. I haven't checked the price of the missile launchers lately. I believe their price actually went up quite a bit. So maybe it's time for me to go and sell some missiles. I have hundreds of C-types just laying around. And perhaps it's time to start selling that. I mean, I have them for a long time now. All of them from PvP. Now, do I expect to see a lot more space bands? Well, yes, I do. And I'm very interested to see how some of the other missile ships will perform. Now, when you are using cruise missiles, and when you land in a more serious mission, storyline, or an encounter, if you have the implant, I suggest that you go into the precision mode, and the first ships that you focus down are the small ships, because small ships are the, I would say, on the threat level from 1 to 10, small ships are on 7 or 8. The elite small ships that have a micro warp drift that are very fast are on probably 9 and probably on a 10. Again, it depends on the situation. So I usually focus them down first with the precision mode, so that my the precision mode is there to improve the application, and this is where the missile guidance computer kicks in, because it improves the missile parameters by a lot, by 500% for 10 seconds once activated, and that is enough to basically burn down all of the annoying small ships. When you go and shoot at cruisers, battlecruisers, and battleships, you can swap back to the normal mode. If you are in low sec, the warhead charge implant will be very useful if you plan to do a extremely long range orbit. Nowadays, with new skills and with new skills and with the implants and with the general units, you can technically make your space span have 500 to 600 kilometers, or about 350 kilometers cold, which is absolutely insane. That means you can do the low sec storylines in total safety. The only thing that you have to do is you have to manually orbit around, so that no Stratios or no bomber or no interceptor can quickly reach your position. And if you see someone land, you have more than enough time to align and warp out. So the Barghest is a very good choice for low sec storylines, for low sec encounters. Doesn't mean that it's still safe. It's never safe. But in the hands of a skilled pilot, and a pilot that knows the ship or the tactic that I just described here, they will be nearly impossible to catch. So I I just gave you a idea that you can do with the spacepan. Now the other battleships can do something similar. The only difference is that their missile range is not as good as the range on the spacepan. After all, the ship does get a bonus on that, so that's one thing that is quite unique for this ship. However, this ship also costs like 15 billion, while the other missile battleships cost 1 billion, 1.5 billion on average, so with that extra price, you do get some extra performance, I guess. Although, I will go and attempt to do the same thing with the Typhoon. I'm very interested to see what the Raven Striker can do.
Detected.
I don't really think that the siege mode on the Raven is any better. I think that's still I think that it's still pretty bad. I think that it's still unable to apply its siege mode damage to anything, but will be interesting to see how much performance the Raven Striker got from the siege mode, with the new skills, of course. First, the siege modes got buffed on that ship, and now missile. I think the Raven Striker might be a very fun ship. It's known to be one of the tankiest strikers in the game, and the main trait of the Raven Striker is not its DPS, it's its tank. While the ship can still have some pretty good DPS, the main trait of the Raven Striker is its amazing tank. It can be very tanky. However, the very good tank comes at a price of having basically no damage application with the siege mode active, so again, I'm very interested to see how much performance did that ship get. It's one thing to check things on paper, I like to check things in actual combat, so I'll be doing that as well. Now, the ship that will benefit the most from the missiles is definitely the Typhoon 2. Now, the Typhoon 2 is, well, it was already known to be the missile battleship with the best damage application. It has a better damage application than Barghest, but the Barghest has higher alpha damage, higher paper DPS, and in some cases the Barghest does outperform the Typhoon 2 when you're shooting at something big, but the Typhoon 2 with its crazy damage application before the new skills, before the balance, was already extremely lethal for PvP, and it was already capable of popping cruisers, two-shotting cruisers, one-shotting frigates, interceptors. It was already a very scary ship, and the skill requirements for that ship were ridiculous. You don't need advanced skills for a Typhoon. The basic skills are more than enough to get the ship running to its full potential. And all that makes the Typhoon 2 just absolutely insane. I would say the best price to performance battleship in the game, Typhoon and Typhoon 2. These things are just absolutely insane. And I actually prefer the Typhoon 2 over the spacepan, mostly because of the price. You can buy 15 Typhoon 2s for the price of one Barghest. And I will also compare the clear time and the DPS between the two ships, because I think the difference is like, I don't know, the Barghest might clear something like 60 seconds faster or something like even less than that. I think that the actual difference is like 30 seconds or something, or you know, warping from one mission to the other mission, which I guess in some cases can be important, but in a grand scale, just 30 seconds for like what, 15 billion? I don't know. So the price to performance ratio definitely still goes to the Typhoon 2. I really like the ship. One of my favorite battleships in the game. I have a lot of friends who fly that thing and who are very happy with it. So I will see what type of damage application I will get on the Typhoon. You can technically make the Typhoon lock cruisers, frigates, and battlecruisers almost instantly, which makes it so good for PvP, so good for hunting as well. It's honestly a very fun to fly battleship, a very unique one. It's very fast. Besides having crazy application, it's also ridiculously fast. One of the fastest ships in the game. Not as fast as the Nestor. That thing is just insane. But it's pretty fast. It's faster than the Macariel, so it's like really fast. So, how do I like the buff? How do I like the missile buff? I love it. I don't like it. I love it. And I think a lot of you guys will definitely enjoy the extra missile performance. So far,
Enemy ships detected.
the
Warp drive active.
changes have been really good, and I don't see, I can't really find a lot of things to complain about. I would say it wasn't really necessary to slap like all the weapon buffs. Like we would be happy with only the missile buff, but I guess we got all the weapons buffed. So I guess that's one way to balance things out. But the space ban is still as good as I remember. It's actually better than it used to be. And if you have
Docking request
this ship, you will
accepted.
definitely feel the difference. The performance difference is definitely noticeable. It's definitely there. And next time when I come back, I will be taking a look at the Typhoon 2 or the Raven. Not really sure which one I'll do first, but so far I'm very happy with the buffs on the missiles. Hope that you guys enjoy the missiles. Well, I mean, I know a lot of you guys already enjoyed missiles, but with the new buff, I believe that missiles will be a lot more enjoyable. So, with that being said, if you would like to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. And with that being said, stay safe, fly safe, and I'll see you next time.